It's official. The news is out. Next year, Overwatch League is set to look a lot different. Here to break it all down, Jacob Wolf, Tyler Erzberger, live from Los Angeles. Let's talk homestands. We've had a couple this season, but a lot more next season. In fact, we will also have divisions, and let's break that down right now. In the East, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Hangzhou, Chengdu, and Seoul. Over in the West, Dallas, San Francisco, Los Angeles Valiant, LA Gladiators, and Vancouver. South will see Philadelphia, Washington, Houston, Florida, and Atlanta. And what you could call the group of death, at least in terms of travel. In the North, it's New York, London, Paris, Toronto, and Boston. So this will be a roadshow traveling circus format with multiple games happening. There will also be multiple homestands happening at once, with each team having a minimum of 2 homestands, a maximum of 5 per season. Jacob, you've been following this story for a while now. All this information, the makeup of next year's Overwatch League, homestands, and the divisions, what do you make of all of it?
I expect some of these to be really great. Places like our hometown of New York is people, I go to all their local events, people are champing at the bit to waiting for them to come to New York City. And I expect those people to pack out in droves. I think some of these cities, though, don't work at all. And I think really in the U.S., there are only 4 that I point to, conveniently 3 of them with homestands this year, that are almost surefire markets. And that would be Los Angeles, Dallas, Atlanta, and New York. Because all of them are regional hubs central to their location. They all are easy to get to because they're either multiple airports or very large airports in every single case. They are cheap to stay in, at least if you're in New York, you can go stay in Queens and train into Manhattan. Or if you're in LA, you can go and stay in some of these lower budget places and Uber and or Lyft to and from. And Dallas and Atlanta are generally very cheap as well because the South is a cheap and inexpensive place to be. And so when I look at this, I think some of these will go very, very well. I think some of these will go very, very badly. And I actually expect some of the markets I don't really believe in to host more than 2 homestands. And from an event perspective, I think some of them will have a lot of hiccups because you have people who are doing this for the first time, throwing esports events for the first time, who have not been activating a lot in their local market throughout the last couple of years with watch parties and other events like New York Excelsior's Super Smash Brothers stuff. And when you look at that, I think some of them will go really poorly. I think some of them will go really well. And in the U.S., like I said, I think there's really only 4 markets that work surefire.
Season will be from February to August, 28 games per team. And as we mentioned, Tyler, it's going to be a minimum of 2 homestands per market with a maximum of 5. When you look at the schedule, are there any cities that really jump out at you?
This is the first time I've been saying this, so I'm just kind of trying to take it all in. I do agree with Jacob that Atlanta, Dallas, Los Angeles, New York, those are the big 4 markets, I think, in the United States. The one market I see in, in the scope of the schedule and the divisions, that's I think gonna be kind of the darling. And I think we've seen it in the NBA, we've seen it in Major League Baseball, we've seen it in hockey. Toronto. I think Toronto is going to maybe be even the most fanatical market. They had a giant party just for the branding rights and to show off the name and the jersey and the colors. Toronto, I think, is going to be a great market for Overwatch League. But my entire thing is, like, I look at that North Division, I'm saying, look at all that travel, and the traveling, and I think the roadshow is the perfect compromise with the home and away system. But the travel, we've seen so many people retire just this year. I mean, the most popular person at the most recent Atlanta homestand wasn't any of their players. It was the guy who retired in Stage 1, DeFront. It's a worrying trend where I don't think this is going to be the last player that are going to retire because of the insane travel schedule. Some people are going to love it. Dante, who I talked to in Dallas, said he is excited. He's a kid. He wants to see the world. He's super excited to travel out of a backpack. That's awesome for him. To live on the road is awesome. But a lot of these players, they're going to look at XQC, who's one of the biggest streamers on Twitch right now, and say, should I live on airplanes and have minimal practice and get burned out and have to, keep up with all the meta changes and go to London, go to Shanghai, and go all around the world? Or do I just want to sit in my bedroom and play video games and maybe make even more money than I would if I was traveling the world and, tiring myself and burning myself out with this insane travel schedule?
Arda and I spoke to Pete Vlastelica, the new commissioner of the Overwatch League and the CEO of Activision Blizzard Esports Leagues, and he didn't have a good answer to that question, right? That's something we put on him, and his answer was trying to find the balance. And I don't think that's necessarily an Overwatch-specific problem. We've seen it in other games where people opt to be a streamer rather than to be a professional player, but this will make it, I think, to Tyler's point, a lot more exhausting to be an Overwatch pro. But to your point, Tyler, earlier about Toronto as a market, I agree. There are some international markets that are incredibly appealing here. So I think the best market in the entire league is Seoul, South Korea. Whether or not they're going to be able to sell tickets, because people get tickets really, really cheap there generally for esports events. People go to esports events in droves in Seoul. We were there this past October, and I went to some non-League of Legends esports events throughout that period of time. And people were showing up to things like PUBG at the Africa Studios, which is not a big event. People still come out, and there's a culture there around it. The number of people that live in South Korea versus the number of people that know about esports in South Korea, that percentage is way higher than any other country. I also like things like London. London, I've been to a couple of events there, and it's incredible, the esports culture. Things like SSC Arena, which is right next to Wembley, hosted the Face It Major and has hosted other events like Rocket League and other Counter-Strike events, and it's an incredible culture there. I'm excited to see that, and I'm excited for Paris too, which we'll see the League of Legends World Championship in later this year, sort of, I would say, as a little bit of a larger preview as to what that culture looks like at a major event. But I'm excited for some of these international markets. I think some of them are incredibly appealing. Toronto, Seoul, London, and Paris are some of them I look at and go, this has a lot of potential.
Now, you mentioned that interview that we did during the Atlanta homestand weekend with Pete Vlastelica, who is the president and CEO of Overwatch Blizzard Esports. And I asked him, what about when the luster or the newness of the homestands wear off? What kind of numbers do you expect on a regular basis? And that number was in the thousands. You can check that out, by the way, on the ESPN Esports YouTube channel. Clips of it as well at espn.com/esports, which I found to be a very impressive number. Tyler, do you think, where do you land? How do you think the homestands will look once the newness of it all has worn off, and now we're getting into situations where this is the 8th homestand that we've seen in, say, Atlanta or New York, and it's a battle between two non-playoff teams?
It's like any sport. It's like any traditional sport, Arda. I mean, we're all sports fans. We all support our local teams. But when a team is bad and they're out of the playoffs and there's no stars on the team, attendance is going to dwindle unless you're in a hotbed market. So LA Valiant, if they're bad, I still think they're going to draw a good crowd. If the Florida Mayhem aren't doing very well, I don't expect, Miami or Orlando to draw big crowds. I really do think that we are going into an era of player empowerment. I think we've seen it in NBA recently with players kind of holding up owners and teams. I think with the free agency market going to be so open with all these 2-year contracts coming up, and all these players can go into free agency saying, hey, pay me or I'm going to go become a streamer. And so much of the attendance is going to be driven by these star players like a Jonak or a Prophet or a Sinatra. I think that the free agency for Overwatch League this year is going to be insane. It's going to be incredible. Players are going to make so much money this offseason because the teams need the stars to draw in these markets. They don't eat, because if you're a bad team at the beginning of your homestand, let's say you're a bad team next year, attendance is just going to keep dwindling. You need to get a big interest fast when it comes to esports, and especially Overwatch League, and I think that means that we're going to see a lot of big numbers coming this offseason. Jonak, Saobi, all these big-name players, I cannot wait to see the numbers that come out of free agency.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room for just a second. The most popular team in Season 1 of all of Overwatch League was the Houston Outlaws, and now there are people sitting there that are worrying about losing their jobs because this team just sold and is going to have to be resold again, and there's going to be a new ownership group that acquires this with 6 to 8 months to get this together. Holy crap. It's crazy to me. I can't believe that this is all going down. And while this is happening, while people are having to plan and sign venue agreements, and people like Immortals who now own that team on a non-permanent basis have to make these financial decisions for an owner that doesn't even exist on that cap table yet. It is incredibly scary. I know people who work at that organization that feel like they're going to get laid off as soon as it's acquired. And how are you supposed to work on that? And this is a team that was at the top of this league in terms of popularity in Season 1. Obviously, the Reigns sort of hold that slot now, I would say, if we're going off of cheer bits. But oh my goodness, I don't know how Houston gets this together. And if I'm the new owner, I acquire this team, I wait out the 2020 season, I hope it goes well, and then I move it somewhere else, because this is a really hard position to be in.
With that said, it has to be said that during the Dallas homestand weekend, Tyler, we saw, we used the word a lot in this segment, in droves. Well, we saw a lot of Houston Outlaws fans make that 4-hour drive from Houston to Dallas to support their team, and it was really great to see.
Oh, it was awesome. The Houston fans are amazing. Outlaw fans are some of the biggest and the rowdiest and the loudest when it comes to the team. But here's the thing. If Jake leaves, if Raucus leaves, because they have no ownership. So if their contracts are up going into the free agency and teams like Florida or, a smaller market is like, we need fans to come to our events. We need, some brand name stars. If Houston doesn't have Jake next year, if they don't have Raucus, if they don't have these players that kind of built the Outlaws brand, we're not going to see, as crazy amount of fans, going in droves like we saw coming into Dallas. Because this is a star league. This esports is so player driven. This has only been the second year of Overwatch League. So if Jake goes to Washington, you better bet that a lot of those Houston fans are about to buy some Jake Justice jerseys. It's a thing where this offseason is so important for so many teams, where they need to either keep their stars or sign some new ones. And not just win, they need some recognizable stars that can bring in some fans to, sign some autographs when they come to, your homestand. So Houston might be in the worst spot of any team because they have no ownership, really. They need to sell, and they're going to have some players that maybe aren't the best mechanically, but they know how to sell tickets. And these teams need to sell tickets next year. So Jake, Raucus, Linkser, all these players, Houston needs them to keep that brand alive, but I don't know if they're going to be able to if no owner.
Last question for both of you. We know that these changes that will come in the Overwatch League next season may not stick around forever. This could be a test year to see how things will perform and what will happen for years to come. When you look at this, do you believe more in this traveling roadshow format? Do you think it will be successful, or do you think still the plan is to get home and away games like traditional sports, and do you think that will succeed? Jacob, start with you.
I don't think we'll go to the home and away game model ever in the Overwatch League. As I understand, this was a group decision made by their owners. The majority owners of that room said that they would prefer to do the roadshow format. Obviously, some of the traditional sports ones were all about the home and away model because that's what's comfortable to them and what they do in their everyday lives in traditional sports. But I think that it would be really difficult on the players, especially because it's a global league, unlike things like the NFL or the NBA. And I think overall, when you look at this, the Overwatch League better hope that it gets more viewers, and it better hope that it can find ways to make more money and be financially sustainable, because this is going to expedite costs and make them exorbitant. And so when you look at that, there's a lot of moving parts here that have to shake out for this to work long term, and the jury's out on that. I don't know where that stands.
If home and away was never going to work unless every team had their own charter jet and every team was getting first class for their travel from international. Like you would need to add millions of dollars would have to be put into infrastructure when it comes to traveling for the home and away series to even work, and that's years and years away. But the traveling circus and this home model, if it doesn't work next year, Overwatch League isn't going to last until 2022. Like, this needs to work. If this doesn't work, Overwatch League is done. And I'm not saying it's going to be. If this doesn't work next year, if it doesn't work in the next 2 years, what's the future for this league? We've seen that Blizzard isn't afraid to cut costs. They are not afraid to cut costs and to put resources into something new. Look at Heroes of the Storm. They put so much money into that. They put so much money into making that, a competitor to League of Legends and Dota 2 and make that an alternative. When they saw it wasn't working, they cut it. And all those pros were just pushed away. Their careers were over in a night. They had no clue that careers were coming to an end and that their livelihoods were going to get cut just like that. So I'm telling you right now, if this doesn't work and this homestand doesn't, create a bigger league for Overwatch League, Blizzard is not going to be afraid to be like, hey, we have a new game on the horizon. Let's just pivot to that. They have Call of Duty now. They have a different league. So if Call of Duty does better than Overwatch League, don't be surprised if those resources go from Overwatch League to Call of Duty and they say, we gave a good try of Overwatch League. It was a beta test. We'll get them next time. It needs to work. And I think they have 2 years. And if they look at this in 2 years and say, wow, this didn't work, Overwatch League, not going to last.
Agree or disagree? Find us on Twitter at ESPN_esports and keep it locked as always at ESPN.com/esports.